What's better, a condo or a house? That's the question that we're going to answer in today's video. And I'm going to put the two side by side so that you have all the information you need in order to make the decision of whether to buy that condo or that single family home. But before we get into it, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers, where one lucky subscriber is going to win $5,000 just for subscribing to this channel. All you have to do is click that subscribe button, and the winner can use that money to put towards their RESP for their kids' education, their RSP, their TFSA. They can pay down their mortgage, pay down other debt, or simply do with it whatever they like. But in order to win, you have to subscribe. So go ahead, click that subscribe button. I appreciate the 15,000 of you who already have. And if you haven't, let me ask you this question. What do you have to lose? Other than the chance to win $5,000. So it's free, it's easy, it's definitely worth it. Go ahead and do it. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price, in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss buying a house versus buying a condo. What's better, condo or house? It is the age-old question, and I'm going to start by saying that most of it comes down to you and your preferences, but there are some things you need to understand about buying a single-family home. There's positives and negatives that go along with it, and there's some pretty big positives and negatives that go along with buying a condo as well. So I'm going to pop you into the screen here, side-by-side comparison. Left side is house, right side is condo. Let's get into the details. So first and foremost, let's start by taking a look at freehold versus condo and what it means. So single family homes are typically, but not always, freehold property, which means you own the title, you own the land, you own everything that is built upon it. So you own that house and that property in its entirety, which means you have complete autonomy over the decisions that you get to make within, of course, local bylaws about the property. So you can paint it whatever color you want, you can add additions, you can take things off, assuming you have the right permits, and you basically have full control over the property. And you also have full responsibility for the property, meaning you have to pay for all the maintenance and everything else. We'll get into that in a second. With a condo, as an alternative, you are buying into a corporation that owns a piece of land and the building that you are living in. And typically what you're purchasing is a unit in that condo, which gives you voting rights, shares in the corporation, and the right to do what you want within the confines of your unit, which usually means, in the case of a condo, paint to paint, and sometimes in a townhouse, it means that you have to the middle of the walls. Now, the big thing with a condo is you don't own everything with respect to plumbing and electrical and all of those things, which means that if you want to change something, plumbing or electricity wise, you need to consult the condo board or the corporation and get their permission to do so. You also have a bunch of other restrictions with respect to what you can do in the properties. So you may have pet restrictions. You may not be able to have a dog over a certain size. And there are a whole host of other restrictions that you may have as well with respect to how you use the property, different noise rules than you would have in a house, and so on and so forth. And those are typically what's called the bylaws of the corporation. And that pretty much dictates what you can and can't do. And the condo corporation has the right to enforce those rules. So when you're purchasing a condo, make sure that you do a full condo review and understand what the rules that you're agreeing to is before you purchase it. Because once you're in there, they're pretty freaking hard to change. Now, with respect to maintenance, with a house, you are responsible for all maintenance. So if a furnace goes, if the water heater goes, if the roof blows off, if there's structural issues, you are responsible for absolutely everything. Now, in a condo, on the other hand, you are not necessarily responsible for everything. You're only responsible for your portion of the share of those things. So let's say the boiler goes in a condo. Well, you're responsible for your share of that, not the entirety of it, which makes condo living, in theory at least, a lot more economical over the long run. The other thing is, with respect to mowing lawns, landscaping, clearing snow, in a house, you're absolutely responsible for those things. In a condo, those things are typically taken care of for you. So you pretty much get to wake up and go about your business rather than having to go out and shovel snow in the middle of the winter. Typically condos, and especially high-rise condos and apartment condos, are what we call lock and leave. And this is why they're popular among the retirement community, is because you literally can lock the door and leave, and all the maintenance and everything else is taken care of for you. Now, One of the big things and one of the big advantages of condos that people don't even realize because they look at things like the condo fees and go, whoa, that's expensive, is that those condo fees, typically a portion of the condo fees end up going towards what's called the reserve fund. And the reserve fund is based on a study that, at least in some provinces, is done every 5 years. And it basically goes through and looks at the condition of the carpets, the doors, the windows, the walls, everything that could possibly need to be replaced, the roof, all those other things. And it basically gives a prediction of how long those things would last, and then it budgets out for the repair or replacement of those things, which means that every single month you're putting a little bit away towards the maintenance and the future maintenance of that property. Now, with a house, you don't have that reserve fund. So in theory, if you're a responsible homeowner, you would be taking money and setting it aside every month for that just in case. That just in case for when the roof does need to be repaired, if there's structural damage, if windows need to be replaced, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing about a house is a lot of times people will use the equity 10, 15, 20 years down the road to pay for the things that need to be repaired. They'll do what's called a refinance, and that's fine. But the big thing here is that the reserve fund ends up being an advantage to owning a condo because everybody is putting towards the future renovations and the future maintenance of that property. Now that leads us into condo fees, because condo fees are quite contentious. Obviously, they often seem to have a big price tag. Most people don't realize that they come with things like the reserve fund built in and the maintenance costs and the hiring of a management company to make sure everything is taken care of. So while sometimes the price may seem steep, quite often they're worth every single penny. Now, of course, if you have a single family home, you don't have condo fees, but you also have to pay for your own electricity, your own heat, your own maintenance, and anything else that goes along with the property. So eventually, if you own a single family home, you'll end up paying pretty close to what the condo fee would be anyways if you were to own a condo that was comparable to the house. Let's say you could just find a house and a condo that were comparable in size. Typically, the maintenance costs of a single family home would probably catch up to that of a condo anyways, because you got to remember that with condos, you get multiple units together, which means you get economies of scale, which means that over time, it actually brings down the prices. Now, this isn't always true, but for the most part, it tends to be over the long term. Now, with a single family home, you have complete control. You want to paint your house pink? Go for it. You don't want to fix the roof? You don't have to. You don't want to do the maintenance and all those things? Yeah, you may risk dealing with a bylaw officer, but you don't have to shovel your walk or mow your lawn or anything else. Your neighbors might hate you, but you have the option and you have the control. You also have the control to make improvements. With a condominium, on the other hand, you have to go through the condominium corporation to make a lot of changes, and you basically have a vote but not control, which means if you want to do something like paint the building a different color, you have to get the majority of owners on side. If you want to make changes like have new balconies like one of our condos just had put on, you have to get the majority of the owners on side. So there's a lot of things that you end up having to do, and you have to do by consensus with a condo versus if you wake up one morning and you decide you want to make changes to your single family home, you have the ability to. So if you're the type of person who wants complete control, condo living probably isn't for you. Now, that leads us into the next section, which is autonomy, and just having that autonomous ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it. You don't necessarily have to worry about playing loud music inside your house and worrying about the neighbor beside you, because you have the ability to turn the speakers on and not necessarily disturb your neighbors that are, set off 6 feet from you if you're in a house. But if you're in a condo and you want to play loud music, well, guess what? You got to deal with probably a neighbor on your left, a neighbor on your right, one above you, one below you, and maybe even 4 more that are on the corners. So you really don't have as much control with a condominium as you would, and as much autonomy. And keep in mind that often walls are thin and your neighbors know everything. Yeah, I mean everything that you are doing and when you're doing it. So that is one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is that when you live in a condo, it is essentially a community, and you're going to need to be able to get along with your neighbors. But the added benefit is you also have a community. You get to know people better. As you're riding up and down the elevator, you get to know your neighbors, and it can really be a great thing living in a condominium. And some of the best times of our life was living in a condo when we had neighbors that were close by, that we were close to, that would just walk down the hall, knock on the door, and come by for a drink. Now that's true. You can have that in a single family community as well, but it just isn't quite the same as living in a condo. Now, one other thing to consider is the density, because condos are typically built in communities and areas that are high density, lots of amenities, and there's lots of people around, especially when you get into downtown cores, which for a young individual or somebody who wants to be on the scene could be a huge, huge benefit. However, for somebody who maybe doesn't want to be in a high density area, a single family home may be a better benefit. We saw during the pandemic that people's preferences changed from wanting to be in high density areas to low density areas as the pandemic kind of went on and people were starting to be afraid of being around other people. Now we're seeing this shift back to people wanting to be in higher density areas as the world opens back up. But it is one thing to consider is the amount of people that live in a very small area goes up significantly when you live in an apartment condo or a townhouse condo. And last but not least, as a general rule, if you are looking to enter into the market, you can get into a condo for significantly cheaper than you can a single family home, because you can buy a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom small unit, 700-800 square feet, and get a fairly reasonable price with fairly low maintenance costs. Now, to get into a single family home, we know that across Canada, it can range anywhere from about $300,000 to well over $1 million now if you look at areas like Toronto and Vancouver. And that is important to note because living in a condo can be significantly cheaper and more cost effective, and it can give you a lot more lifestyle when it comes to things like not having to do maintenance. But there is that nice thing about having a single family home, having your own space, being far away from your neighbors, and living in the house with the yard, with the amenities that you want. So really, it's one of those things that for a single family home, you lose the economies of scale, you pay a higher price, you get a little bit more in the way of autonomy and privacy, but with a condo, you can get a little bit better deal, and you ultimately give up a little bit of autonomy, but you get a lot more with respect to amenities and with respect to lifestyle. So there's a lot to consider here, and ultimately the answer to whether or not you should be buying a condo or a house, which is better, comes down to the lifestyle that you want to live and the amount that you want to pay for a property. If you want a cheaper place and you want to live downtown in a high density area, condos are right for you. If you got a little bit more money, you're willing to pay for autonomy and you're willing to pay for space, then a single family home is right for you. But at the end of the day, which is better comes down to a question of which you prefer and which one best fits your lifestyle. Now, if you're in the market for a single family home or a condo, we have a course that we've put together. It's called the Homebuyer Bootcamp. I'll link it in the description below. We basically walk you through start to finish from saving the down payment to finding a home to choosing a realtor, all the way through the process in basically a 4-week boot camp, which you can do a lot quicker than 4 weeks if you choose to. But we have basically set up this course so that everybody has the information they need to buy a house, because quite frankly, a lot of this information isn't out there in an organized and concise format. So if you want to join us on that journey, if you would like us to join you on your home buying journey, there's a link in the description below. That course is priced so inexpensively that anybody who's looking at buying a house can afford it and will get at least 10 to 50 times their money back. In fact, we put a special offer for Mortgage 360 in there to guarantee that you get at least 10 times your money back if you choose Mortgage 360 as your mortgage brokerage. And ultimately, even if you don't take that course, which I would love it if you did, because if you're watching this video, you've clearly got questions and we've definitely got answers in that course. But if you don't take that course, at least do me that favor, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers. I sincerely hope that you, yes you, who made it to the very end of this video and even listened to my little pitch on the Homebuyer Bootcamp, which I do for you, by the way, I hope you are the winner of that $5,000. We'll see you on the next video. Cheers.